So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this cycle of conference around the impact of COVID on democracy. Today we'll be talking about power in capital, because we'll be talking about the role of lobbies in the European Union. So let me start first with some housekeeping rules, very simple. This webinar will be in English, but the Spanish version will be available on our website, Desenmascarando el Poder. So, para nuestra audiencia en español, deciros que ahora esta versión será en inglés, pero dentro de un ratito, en una hora o así, estará disponible en nuestra web Desenmascarando el Poder. You can follow us on the social networks, on social media, Desenmascarando el Poder with the hashtag. And in the meantime, feel free also to bring us your comments, your ideas, your suggestions, and anything that can inspire you from the conversation we'll be having today. So this idea today, talking about power at the European level, we are happy and we are lucky to have with us today Manon Aubry. Manon is a good friend. She joined La France Insoumise in December 2019, I think, 2018. And she was elected as a European member of the European Parliament in May 2019. And since then, she's even the co-chair of the GUE, which is the group of the left-wing parties in the European Parliament. But before that, Manon was working for Oxfam also, Oxfam France, and we were working together on many campaigns on tax justice, where we started also to understand what is the power of lobbies and how to approach them. So Manon, today, thank you very much. I mean, it's really big pleasure to have you with us today. We know you're very busy. And we know also that you are not only very busy, but you are one of the most influential MEPs on social networks. You've been recognized for your activity on social networks. One of those activities is what you call le coin des lobbies. So tell us what a group like a GUE, and what do you do? Because you are not the biggest political group in the European Parliament, but how you use the social network, how you understand a group of GUE can play in front of those lobbies.
Well, first, hi Susana, hola a todos y disculpe, no hablo español. As you can hear, my Spanish is not so great yet for such conversation, but thanks very much to the translation, and thanks for the invitation and for the time that we're spending today. Indeed, I have this very specific curses, I would say, in which, moving from one side to another, but still going around lobbies and seeing what lobbies are doing. So to answer your question, for those who don't know the European Parliament, there isn't a single group on its own that has the majority, which means in practice that which is very different from my country in France, for example, where the party of Emmanuel Macron has the majority in the parliament, so they can decide and do whatever they want. It's very different in the parliament, in the European Parliament. So they need to bring together coalitions, so whatever needs to be voted. So despite our group being rather small, definitely smaller than the EPP, which gathers the right wing, for example, well, they still need us. They needed us, for example, when we voted a couple of weeks ago, a new target of reduction of 60% of CO2 emissions by 2030. That's a new goal that was set by the European Parliament. Without a group, this could not have been voted. But that being said, it's very frustrating at times, because for sure on our own we cannot decide and set the European agenda. And I think our role is kind of twofold. One is when we can to build these majorities, to those progressive majorities, but second, to sort of play as whistleblowers, I would say. So we dare to warn about what's going on in the parliament, to try to destroy the walls that exist between the European Parliament, which is this thing far away in Brussels. No one knows what's going on about although it has an impact on our daily life. So we need to destroy those walls that are very, very, very thick walls. And when you enter they call it the Brussels bubble. When you enter the Brussels bubble, somehow you can feel disconnected from the people you're supposed to represent. So our role as the left, I believe, is to kill these walls and to bring back the reality into the European Parliament. And on the other hand, to bring the reality of the Parliament and what's going on in the Parliament into people's life. And that's why I've been doing what you called, what you mentioned, Coin des Lobbies. So that's in French. I would say lobby corner. It's because, of course, having worked for Oxfam, I knew how lobbies were powerful, but I knew it from the outside. I knew it from, following policies, and I was trying to advocate myself. And, sometimes I felt that there was bigger influence than me as an NGO. And I could see it from the outside, and now I see it from the inside. And, as an MEP, you do receive regular emails, you receive gifts, you receive voting instructions from lobbies, etc. And I was receiving all of those, and I was like, of course, I was annoyed. I was angry at the way democracy worked. And instead of just like receiving it and throwing it away, which was my first intuition, I decided, well, actually, people need to know. People need to know about what's going on. And that's why every week with my team, we actually have quite some fun in picking some of the worst lobby letters or recommendations or invitations or whatsoever that we receive from whatever lobby at the EU level, and actually expose it. And that's where I think we can make a difference as well, in exposing the very dirty practices in the European bubble. That is the number 2, the second place, just after Washington, in terms of how much lobby are doing work towards the institution and how many lobbies there are, etc. Sorry, that was a long answer to start with. I promise I will make sure to answer.
No, but it's interesting, Manon, and we'll talk maybe about Washington at the end of the webinar, because it's a special day in the US, and it's going to have some impact also on the European policies. But let's put some examples. You've been especially active on the role of those lobbies, especially when discussing the agricultural policies in Europe, when the PAC was negotiated. Tell us a bit more. We say an example. We want to understand how those lobbies are operating and what's the impact, and how a group like you is trying to put some barriers, some limitations in front of those lobbies. And I mean, to some extent, do you feel like David in front of Goliath? Do you really feel that their power is something you can stop, or they have too much power to stop, to get them stopped?
Well, first about the example, and then I will tell you how David can become Goliath. But about your example on the PAC, so it's the Common Agricultural Policy. It's very important if people don't know about it. It's the #1 budget in the European Union. It's close to 400 billion of euros for 6 years, and it's about 30% of the European budget. So in other words, it's our money. It's your money, my money, it's our common money. And this common money, we have been voting 2 weeks ago now on a proposal for the next 6 years. This proposal originally comes from a Commission's proposal that is back from 2018. It's been proposed by the Commission, then there's been the European election, and then, well, there were a new parliament, so there was a need for a new vote because this was not finalized before the election. And for a year almost, nothing happened officially. Nothing happened in, what should be the normal institutional work of the European Parliament. But behind back doors, and I should say it's even worse because of the crisis, because you have even less of the official proceedings and official framework, but what we call the big groups, the big 3, so the socialists, the liberals, and the right-wing EPP agreed behind back doors on some agreements on the PAC. So, for example, they refused to change, it's a bit technical, but in short, they refused to support more small-scale farmers, that do have a practice of agriculture that is more respectful towards the planet, environment, etc. So that's just one of the examples, that one of the things that was voting in the pack. And we actually realized that a lot of the proposals come from one of big lobby that is called Copa CGK, that is, of course, not known. You don't know it. No one knows it. But I can tell you it's one of the most powerful in the Brussels Pebble. And if you look at some of the proposals, actually, it definitely pleased them. And a couple of days before the vote, one sign of this being actually, pushed by them is actually they've been sending us an emails telling us how happy they were with the proposals and encouraging us voting it as soon as possible, because one of their fears was that we managed to postpone it. That was part of our strategy, arguing that actually there was no discussion. The compromise to be voted were sent a week before the plenary. This was worth thousands of pages. We cannot amend all of it. There were a lot of things that were done to somehow undermine democracy. And that's why it's very, no matter what you think about the pack, and I can hear some of the right-wing arguments, I think it does deserve a democratical debate. And in the end, there was no such a debate that took place in the parliament. And in the end, I do think that those lobbies had more power than we, although we've been elected for this. And now, just to finish your question, so now if you listen to me, you might have the impression, but well, then what the hell are you doing in the parliament, and why did you go there, and what's your influence? And some might argue that actually we might even have more influence within organizations such as Oxfam. Well, first off, Oxfam does have a lot of power. I do believe in it. But on the other hand, I think all of this should be actually complementary. And how David can become Goliath is actually by empowering David, by becoming many. If, we might not have the power of money, that's for sure, but we do have the power of people. In French, we say, on a les gens et pas l'argent. So tenemos la gente y no dinero, if I got it right in Spanish. So, so for sure it takes time. But if we do, their fear is that people actually understand what's going on in Brussels and actually take ownership of it and start claiming about it. And then if we do become many, well, the deals behind back doors won't be able to leave anymore, because they will be seen, they will be contested by a big majority of people. And that's why we need to empower people to do so.
And do you think that this pandemic is putting even more at risk this democracy? I mean, when we look at the recovery fund, for example, we have like a trade-off. On one hand, there is a sense of urgency in putting as much money as possible on the table to make it to get it to the countries and make sure that the right people is getting it. And at the same time, the speed of decision is is accelerating the decision. And somehow we feel that the trade-off is the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability. So how do we how we can balance this, the speed in reaction, but at the same time protecting not protocols, but the right way of doing things to make sure that it's the right money to the right countries, to the right people, and not an abuse of some large company that have more capacity to get access to those funds?
Yeah, you're perfectly right that there's a risk. At the moment, we're locking down all of our life. And if we do lock down democracy on top of it, I think this will become very, very dangerous. And a good example of what's going on is that, as you may know, in the European Parliament and European institution, lobbies have to register themselves. And they have also to register all of their meetings. Not with all MEPs, unfortunately, that's one of our claims, but at least with the rapporteur, at least with the commissioners, etc. But when you're locked down and you're actually giving a call instead of having a meetings, well, you don't have to register it. And as a consequence, if you look at the lobby registry at in Brussels and the European level, well, all of a sudden, you have less and less meetings registered over the last couple of months. Although I can really tell you that there haven't been less meetings between EU institutions and lobbies over the last few months. So definitely there is a big risk there. And how do we do it then? For sure, there's a need to react swiftly and to react quickly and to deliver in terms of answers to what people are expecting and to the urgency of the situation. But there are procedures for it. And it's not because you need a very quick decision that you should do without democracy and without the willingness of the parliament and people's representatives. And for sure we can vote, and we can you can organize sessions as quickly as possible. You can postpone some of the least urgent files to give priorities. There are many ways to do it, and it seems like for them democracy in times of crisis is a sort of non-essential items. And that's where I'm kind of scared, because we all know from experience that often something that becomes, in theory, just for a short time, actually, enter the normality and remains even outside of the crisis. And that's, I think, the direction we're taking at the moment.
So we were already some European democracy that was at risk. We were already talking about the need to renew the balance of powers and the ways of work in the governance at the European Union. So this pandemic is putting even more pressure on the need to reform some of those protocols, the governance and the balance of power within the European bubble, because the power is not only at the European Parliament level within those political groups, but the European Parliament needs to make sure that your power in front of the Commission, that means the commissioner named by the countries and the council which is the countries themselves, this triangle is working well. So how the European Parliament is trying to make sure that the lobby you can play a role in front of lobbies within the European Parliament, but how you can ensure that those lobbies are not using this backdoor with the Commission or with the Council to use their influence in making sure that at some point of this triangle, they making things happen?
Well, first off, you need to regulate at several levels. First, I think we need to empower the European Parliament, because you described it well, this triangle: Council, Commission, Parliament. Only the Parliament is directly elected to actually, vote on European policies. But, and we tend to forget it, and for those watching us, we're the only democracy in the world, if we can call it democracy, where those people elected, me, elected by French people, I cannot put forward a proposal. I cannot put forward a European law that is called a directive. So it means that I've been elected to propose things that I don't have the power to propose. So one thing that we need to do is to introduce a right of initiative for the European Parliament to have a balance of power, like a better balance of power between the three institutions. Then, that being said, of course, that will not prevent lobbies from, influencing the European Parliament. One of the ways we should do it is, for example, to ensure that MEPs don't have any other functions. I've been elected as an MEP, and I'm not working for anyone else. I'm not working for Oxfam anymore. I'm not working for anyone. I've just been elected by people, and I'm only accountable to them. And people might be very scared when they hear that actually a third of the MEPs in the Parliament actually get some outside money of more than €1,000 a month. I mean, if once you know this, you're like, seriously, MEPs, do you miss money? Like, don't you think your salary is already too high? Or, and for sure, if you earn money, and you're paid, for example, by some weird interest or even directly by some lobbies, well, this is not forbidden. This should clearly be forbidden from now on. We had examples of the rapporteur for the trade deal between the European Union and Vietnam. And this rapporteur was an EPP rapporteur, if I remember correctly, has been actually involved and directly involved in some association and I would say, groups of interest, would say, from Vietnamese companies. So for sure, he's not neutral, and he cannot be the rapporteur of such an important trade deal that will have some implication for both Vietnam and the European Union. So this should be forbidden. That's one of the rules that should be promoted to ensure that we are only accountable to people and not to lobby. And then, of course, we need to strengthen transparency because, for example, I mentioned it earlier, lobbies don't have to report all of their meetings with MEPs, only with the rapporteur. And then we should organize better consultation. It doesn't mean that, of course, for sure, if we do a European directive that has an implication for companies, we need to hear the consequences for them. But we need to do this in a public hearing. That's how democracy should work. And then everyone can hear this, and companies should, take the responsibility of what they're saying. And then we should hear whole views. And based on those views, actually build a rule that would work at the European level for everyone. That's how I see democracy.
Good, but the European Commission has the project to renew, to revitalize democracy in the European space with this, what is called the Transparency and Democracy Package. And the meaning of this initiative is to put on the table some ideas that could have also some effect in the way, even on the advertising of many of the political initiatives that are discussed at the European level. Many people don't know, but for a country like Spain, about 80% of laws are coming from the European decision. So whatever is decided in Brussels has a direct impact, and Brussels is also something that is very present in our reality. So do you think this transparency and democracy package from the European Commission is a good way? Do you see some opportunities here? You see from the European Parliament a way to influence this to improve the ways of working?
Well, for now, it's mainly cosmetic, to be honest, and I'm afraid that it's being postponed because of the crisis as well. Again, this shows that democracy in times of crisis is already secondary. And we see every time when there's any type of crisis, it's a way for many governments and states to actually increase their authoritarian power. So first off, that's something that is being push. There was also the process of the Conference for the Future of Europe that has been launched by the European Commission, to which the objective was part of this transparency and democracy package to revitalize democracy, etc. But I can tell you, for example, from the debate we've been having in the Parliament, I think one of the objectives of that process should actually be to review and revise the European treaties. In the European treaties, it's written, for example, that we as MEP, member of the European Parliament, we cannot put forward a European directive, so a European law. So this needs to be changed. But most of the political powers in Brussels don't want a treaty change. So I believe change will not happen if we, at some point, there isn't a democratic process for people actually to say what do they expect from the European Union, and this leads to a treaty change. And I say this because I come from a country in France where we've been particularly traumatized because there was a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty. The French people said no in 2005, and this was eventually imposed. And this anti-democratic processes, I think, are killing the trust that people might have in democracy. And the consequence of this is that people might not participate anymore in democracy. We see it in all European elections across the European Union. It's one of those elections where people do participate the least. And if you do so, and it's right that you remind Susana that most of the national policies actually come from the European Union, it means that we leave a minority to decide for a majority. And this, I can't tell myself that, there's nothing we can do, and this is too late. So that's why I'm insisting on this, because we need a systemic change. If we want to change the balance of power, we need to go at the roots of it. And the roots of it is actually the way the institutions have been designed at the European level. And we need to bring back people. We need to bring back a democracy in it. So meaning we need to change the European treaties. And I think, sorry, to end on this, when we say so, sometimes people are telling us, oh, but you're not European in saying this, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I do personally think that's the only way to save the EU. Otherwise, people are going to be more and more pissed at the EU. They're going to, move away more and more from the EU, and this just becomes Brexit.
Well, to save Europe, we need to renew, to rethink with the ways, the basement of this Europe. As Oxfam, when we've been working in this political capture, we've been identifying some of those methods, some of those practices, the tactics, some of that are used by the elites. So we've identified the revolving doors, the lobbies, the role also of tax havens to help on corruption and other practices by those elite powers. We've been campaigning together on tax, Manon. I mean, you've seen all those practices on tax, especially to create a state of mind that tax is technical, but it's not political, that tax is not the matter for civil society. But I mean, tax is tax reform are part of the core, of the heart of many of the decisions that will shape also our societies. So give us some example of the way you've been identified, how those lobbies have been active in the European agenda to try to impose some ideas, some vested interest, and how we can, what should be the role and the agenda for an organization like Oxfam and the civil society more globally to make sure that it's tax justice and not tax interests that are put in on the table of those elites.
There are many ways to do it. I just can give you many, not many because we don't have that much time, but I can give you a few examples on how it works and things that might not be seen. For example, the European Central Bank, we've been spotting someone who's called Natasha Valla. We don't really care about her name, but she was playing a very central role in the European Central Bank, and she's been moving to the board of LVMH. LVMH is one of the largest European company. It's a French luxury company. Louis Vuitton, exactly, and the main shareholder of LVMH is Bernard Arnault, who's I believe the second richest now. It must be behind Jeff Bezos. I mean, among the richest. So you see kind of how the circle can be made there. You have sort of a revolving door of people going from the ECB to one of the biggest company, and then that big company benefited from a special program from the ECB. And right at the time when she moved from the ECB to LVMH, so that's weird, at least in terms of timing, it's very much at the same time. And then LVMH makes more money out of it. And then LVMH has, I don't remember how many subsidiaries in tax havens. And then this make one of the richest person in the world even richer. And we need to break that circle. Once we understand that circle, which is the connection in the highest spheres of power between the richest people and the ones who have the most power, and we can see how tax haven can play also in there. Another example that I can mention, one you know very well, Susana, is the way the list of tax haven is decided at the European level, and what we call harmful tax practices, that is done by a very, very secret group that is called the Code of Conduct. Was made in 93, if I remember correctly. And this group, there's no minutes of this group. We don't know how they work, and we don't know how they take decision. But their decision have an influence on, for example, the list of tax haven. So we can take one policy after the other, and we can see how actually the fact that it's very secret helps lobbies have an influence. And on top of this, you add the revolving doors that is so common at the European level. These people just live in the same sphere, and they just move from one to another. For example, the French commissioner of the internal market has been moving from one of the largest French companies to being the commissioner of internal market, specifically on new technologies, and his company was leading in new technologies. So revolving doors need to be stopped, with also a cooling off period. If you leave the European institution, fine, fair enough, but then you don't go to a private company to sell what you've been doing at the European level, and vice versa. We need people being there to go on the name of the general interest, not very specific interest. But for that also, we need people to say that we tired of those politicians going back and forth between companies and the European institution, and ruling not on behalf of the many, but just on behalf of the few.
Well, I mean, on that today, we are all holding breath and tracking what is happening in the US. Do you think that the power of people, I mean, is what we can get power thanks to the power of people, and do we need the power of money to be in the power? And just in 30 seconds after, give us a quick agenda. What should be the way to put end to those lobbies, to put at the center of every political decision the power of people?
Well, the word of the US, glass half empty. We can see that once people invest money, they can still have an influence on a vote. Glass half full. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have proved that despite having in front of her some of the candidates that have put the most money into the election, they can still win. And the reason why she's winning, it's because she has the power of people. So the only way to counter the power of money is to have the power of people. And when we talk about the power of people, it's not you and me, Susana. With all respect I have for your work and my work, it's people actually behind a computer. It's people who might be watching us. It's people going down the street. It's people, making their representative accountable. It's a change of culture as well, and we need to impulse towards representative. I'm transparent on every single thing I do of my day, of the money I spend, of who I hire, of who I talk to, and this is really a change of culture. Maybe it should be also generational change, but this is one of the ways to start the change, and to end on a bit of hope. Setting an agenda for the next couple of months. Well, in the next couple of months, there will be a big work done in the European Parliament around the building up of independent body. So we're trying to push an independent ethics body in charge of looking at conflicts of interest, to stop conflict of interest, to set up new rules for MEPs and EU institutions. And this would be breaking news. The head of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, committed to it. Now we're pushing for it because We need for once that the general interest win over private interest, and that's why we need a sort of independent body to look at it. So that's in the very near future. And then we have a couple of very important policies to be decided on climate change, on the recovery plan at the European level, and this would be one way to test whether private interests are winning over the general interest. And again, I cannot stress enough that the only way to change the balance of power is actually to look at what's going on over there, and to take ownership at what's going on, and once for all to destroy those walls that split the life of the European Parliament and the European institution with everyone's life. We need you people to take the power and to help us, because you can be sure that it's not lobbies which are going to help us for this.
Manon, merci beaucoup, grand merci. Thank you very much for
all
your work, all your energy, for keeping us also with new and fresh ideas and energy to keep moving ahead. This webinar, as I was saying, will be available on the website in English and in Spanish, Desenmascarando el Poder. It's part of a cycle of webinars, of conference, of debates, when we want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on democracy's health. The last seminar will be taking place tomorrow again at 6:30 p.m. Central Europe time, on the role of technology as an ally or a threat to modern democracy, something you know quite well also. So thank you very much, Manon. Thank you very much to everyone who's been with us today and who will be following us. Keep engaging, keep active, you and for all of our audience also, because it's the power of people who will break the power of those lobbies, at least at the European level also. Thank you, Manon, and à bientôt.
Pleasure, and keep it up.